Hey guys, Austin here with Wunderladen Racing. I wanted to show you a new product we've been working on. For those not familiar, this is our 10th gen Honda Civic. We've been using it as a development vehicle to develop parts with, and we've also been competing in Grid Life's Club TR Time Attack class. And we were at a test day with the car a couple weeks ago at Gingerman Raceway in South Haven, Michigan. And the rear brakes started making some noise, so we took a look and we had realized that we had run out of brake pad and they were tapered pretty badly. So this one isn't the worst, but this one is definitely worse. You can see it's basically down into the backing plate. And when you compare that to the far side over on this one that still has a few mils left, it's pretty significant pad taper, especially being a rear brake. Normally it's not normal to see pad taper on rear brakes. So I looked at the caliper a fair bit and noticed that the slide pins, they live inside a rubber bushing, which is not great. It's good for keeping grease in. It's easy to install and it's very cheap, which is why you see designs like this done. But for racing purposes or getting good brake performance and not having terrible pad taper like that, it's generally a poor design. So what we've come up with is these bronze bushings. So these replace those rubber grommet bushings, and basically they just allow that slide pin to stay true while it's being used, while the brake is compressing, so that the caliper can't twist and give you that resulting pad taper because of it anymore. I'll take you over to the bench and I'll give you a little bit of a breakdown as to what these look like and how they install and the features they've got. So we're back at the bench now. On the right here I've got the factory rubber bushing, and on the left I have our bronze bushing. Factory rubber bushing is nothing fancy, it's just exactly that. Very easy to squish, not very desirable for brake performance. This is our bronze bushing. This just slides into the caliper. It's retained on the back side with this snap ring, and that just allows the bushing to stay in the caliper whenever you've got to take things apart for a brake job or something like that. On the front of the bore we have an O-ring. That O-ring just serves as a seal. It keeps the pin grease inside the bushing. It also keeps dirt out. And then on the back side we have a high temperature silicone cap, and this just fits over the back, kind of like the factory plastic cap. Just keeps dirt out, keeps the grease in. I'll take you guys back to the car. I'll show you how to uninstall the factory rubber bushings, and then I will show you how to install our bronze bushings. Okay, so we're back at the car now. Here I've got the factory rear brake caliper. It still has the factory rubber bushings in it. And first things first, we're going to come around to the back side over here, and right down here there is this wiring connector. That's for the electronic parking brake. You'll need to remove that. Normally I like to depress it with some small needle nose. These locking tabs can sometimes be a little bit of a pain. Once that's out of the way, we'll be able to move the caliper more easily. Next step is to remove the plastic cap for the lower pin. And just pop that out with a screwdriver. And then we're going to remove the lower pin. It's a 7mm Allen. You can use either a ratchet or an Allen key. Either work. They don't need to be torqued super tight. And once that's out, you can pull the pin. Sometimes you gotta kind of wiggle it to get it out of the rubber bushing. So that's the slide pin. Next, we're going to swing the caliper up on the top pin, just allow it to rotate, which if your brake is compressed, you might have to give it a little bit of force. And so that gives us access to this lower pin. So to remove the bushing, what we're going to do, we're going to take a flathead screwdriver, and we're basically going to get underneath that outer rubber flange. We're going to push in towards the bore, and then we're going to push back, and that's going to compress it enough to get it through and kind of down in there, and then from there just pull on the back side with our other hand and it pulls through. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Normally doesn't cause any damage to the bushing either, so if for any reason you ever have to put these guys back in, you can just pop them back in without having to buy new ones. Next, we've got to get the upper one out. So now that we can swing the caliper up, we don't need to pull that top pin. We'll just slide it back. We'll do the same thing to the top bushing that we did to the bottom. We're just gonna get our flathead, push in, push back, grab the back of it, pull it out, and there we go. Okay, so we've got the factory bushings removed. I'm going to set this caliper aside real quick, and I'm going to remove that upper pin as well, because they are easier to install from the back side on the bronze bushings than trying to fit the bronze bushing over the pin. It's the O-ring is a pretty tight fit. It gives a pretty good seal, so we just want to make sure that it is going to go in nice and smoothly. Okay. So with that, everything's apart. I'm going to go grab those bronze bushings and I'll show you how this all goes together. Okay. So I'm back with our bronze bushings, and first things first, we're going to get some grease inside them. It's a little easier to get this all together without making a mess if you load them up before installing them. So what I like to do to get grease in there, I'll take a small pick or a small flathead screwdriver, get some brake caliper grease, and just put it in and just kind of wiggle it around. Spread that grease down the length of the bore as best as you can. Definitely want to make sure that that O-ring gets nice and lubricated. Do the same thing on the back side. And you don't need a whole ton of grease. It's actually even probably too much. You just need a nice thin layer. That's really all you need. So from there, we're going to put this guy into the caliper, which actually I'm going to pull the caliper back up just to make things a little more accessible. So we're going to, lost a brake pad. Okay. So we're going to load up this top bushing first, and this is just going to slide right in. And we're going to take our snap ring and our snap ring pliers. And this can be a little challenging if you don't have the right snap ring pliers, which mine are a little old and a little worn. So basically you're just going to hold that, put the snap ring on. Let's see if my pliers will not fight me too much. Oh yeah, they're fighting me. Oh yeah, these pliers are not the best. Okay, just get it over the back, slide it down into that snap ring groove, get it in place. You can kind of see it's in that groove there. There's a little bit of space between the snap ring and the caliper. That's normal. There's tolerance variations on these calipers, so we just give ourselves some extra spacing there just so we know they'll always fit. They do slide it back and forth a little bit, but that won't affect their function. They're not loaded against the snap ring ever, so you won't hear that or nothing either. Once it's all assembled, it basically stays in place. So next, we're going to grab our pins, at least our top pin. For my top pin, I'm going to give it a very light layer of grease. Actually, this one did get a little dirty on my ground here, so I'm going to wipe it off real quick. Get some grease. Don't need a whole ton because there's still grease inside the bushing. And then we're going to slide this into the bushing from the back side. Just like so. And we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. Grab our bushing, get some grease on our pick. Get the grease down in there. Do both sides. Should be good. Get this guy put in the bore. Grab our snap ring and our snap ring pliers. Make sure that snap ring gets seated nicely. You can spin it around to double check if you need to. We're good. Grab our other pin. Wipe off any old grease and apply new grease if it needs it. Put that in the bore, in the bushing, I should say. Just like so, and then we're going to load the caliper back over the pads. Okay, and then we're going to try to get this top pin lined up so it will start threading. And once we know that we're lined up, take our Allen key. We'll start threading it in to the caliper bracket. This is a bit of a process because this brake hose kind of gets in the way. So you only get about a quarter turn, but it goes in. Keep working at it. Just about there. You can kind of see those threads starting to poke through on the front. Just make sure that we get it torqued nice and tight. At least tight enough for the first one. And we'll get our lower one lined up and repeat it. Same process. Except this time we can do it with our ratchet, so that the brake hose isn't in the way. that's nice and tight. We'll just get it snugged up and torqued. And then we'll make sure that the top one is nice and tight as well. And then we will pop our caps onto the back side. Definitely a snug fit, which is good. And you may notice that once you get the cap over it and you push it down all the way, the bushing will kind of suck itself against the caliper. So, and that's its natural resting position. It'll mostly stay there for the most part. And that's it. You got your bronze bushings installed, you're ready to go, and that caliper won't twist and torque around like it used to anymore. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email us, give us a call. We're more than happy to answer anything that you may be curious about. Thanks guys, we'll see you next time.